Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new video. I'm sure most of you are anxiously waiting for the ranking system to reset. No matter how good or how bad you did in Season 4, everyone wants that fresh start and just that fresh climb. And hopefully Riot is going to be resetting the ranking system very soon. So since the new season is hopefully right around the corner, I thought what better video to make than to give you guys my top 5 tips for climbing the ladder. Now as a kind of a disclaimer, I'm obviously not the best player in League of Legends, and I'm not the fastest climber of the ranking system. But I do more or less know what I am talking about when I'm giving you guys these tips because I do have 2 accounts right now in Diamond. The one you're looking at right now is a ranked game from Diamond 3 on my main account Redmercy, and I have a Redmercy account right now that is Diamond 4. So make sure you're polishing up your mechanics before the new season hits and take these 5 tips that I will be giving you into the new season. The first tip I will be diving into in this video is I think one that almost every single player in the League of Legends community can take. And that one is not to rage and to not tilt. Now going on tilt usually is because of rage, whether it's your rage or your team raging at you. But this is such an important one because if either you're raging at yourself or your teammates are raging at you, that'll put someone on tilt. Chances are that game will not go as well. You probably will lose that game, and then the several games you play right after that, which you honestly should and you should take a break, will just result in just losses as well. Now believe me, I know it can be very frustrating when someone on your team is just not playing well, they're just feeding, having a horrible game, and all you want to do is just unleash the rage at them. I know, because sometimes I am in those shoes as well, whether I'm the one that wants to rage or whether I'm having a bad game and people are raging at me. I mean, I'm only human as well. But everybody has bad games. No matter who you are, no matter how amazingly good you are at this game, eventually you will have a bad game. So you have to remember, other people they're just like you. They'll have bad games as well. So I know this is probably one of the hardest things to not do, but trust me, this is really something everyone in the League of Legends community can work at. In fact, some games I've had where my bottom lane, for instance, would just go absolutely feed mode. They will go each of them like 0-6 and just absolutely get dominated in their lane. But the amazing thing was the fact that nobody on the team raged at our bottom lane. Our 2 people at our bottom lane did not rage at each other. And then since they didn't feel extra pressure from their team for performing already poorly and just putting them on further tilt, they felt confident. They felt like, okay, my team is not raging at me, which is a good sign. I feel more comfortable. I can probably just pick it up, get my act together, and just make a great comeback. And I've seen that happen so many times. But when people are just flat out raging at each other, well, the comebacks usually do not happen, and you leave that game with a pretty bad mood. Not the easiest tip to follow, but you really need to try to. Let's go into the second tip, anxiety, or being scared before starting a game or as you queue up. Personally, I rarely get this, but sometimes I do get it myself, but I really hear that a lot of people suffer from this. This one pretty much just means that when you queue up, even for your first game or your 10th game of the day, you feel nervous. The second you hit that queue button, you're already starting to feel anxious, you're starting to feel nervous, you're starting to feel like, oh man, I can't mess up, my team is going to depend on me, I hope people don't rage at me if I fail. And you just get a whole bunch of these nervous thoughts in your head, and you just automatically start performing a lot worse than you probably could. This is what I like to call losing the game before it even starts. You have to remember that for almost 99% of the people playing this game, I mean, it is just a game. Even if you lose, even if you have a bad game, I mean, people might rage at you, but who cares? I mean, you're not going to see them in person, you're not going to really see them ever again, most likely, depending on what ranking you are. And what do you actually lose? I mean, you might lose like 10 LP, and sure, that's a little bummy, but that's not the end of the world. Think of it this way, the more nervous you are before the game starts or as you hit that queue up button, the worse you'll perform, and the chances of the team raging at you, which is probably what you're scared of from the beginning, is just increasing. So if you just try to minimize how nervous you get and just go into the game with a fresh mind, a calm mind, the chances of everything that you're potentially going to be scared of will just decrease and it won't even happen. But now let's go into tips that are focusing more about the game itself. The next one I want to talk about is one-trick ponies versus the master of all trades. A one-trick pony is basically a person that can only play one champion, but they play that champion very well. And a master of all trades means that a person can play almost every single champion quite well, but not one champion exceptionally well. The reason I bring this up is because you should honestly choose one of 2 paths. Either one can work, but I honestly recommend the second one if possible. The reason I recommend being a master of all trades is because you'll have a lot more variety, you can bring overall more to your teams in solo queue, but it is slightly harder since you will have to learn more champions. But being a one-trick pony is not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a bit more risky. Because obviously if that champion is banned or picked, well, I mean, you're obviously not playing that champion. If you play on the North American server, well, the North American server server is quite known to have a lot of one-trick ponies and a very high rating. For instance, Box with his Riven, RF Legendary with his Nidalee, you got The Box with his Veigar, you got plenty Zed mains, and you have so many more one-trick ponies that I just can't remember off the top of my head. But the point is that there's so many, and clearly since all these one-trick ponies are able to get quite high rating with Diamond 1 or plus, this method obviously does work. Again, I recommend choosing one of two paths. Do you want to just be ridiculously good with one champion and just absolutely stomp almost every single game? Or do you want to just be able to be a better solo queue player, offer more to your team, being able to play a huge variety of champions at quite a good level? Which brings me to my next point in this tip. You should try to main one role. For instance, be exceptionally strong at mid lane, but then have a second role as your backup, for instance, the marksman or AD carry. In solo queue, you won't always get your role, and chances are a lot of the times you will have to play other roles. So have a main role, have a secondary role, and then be at least somewhat familiar with the other three roles, so that if you are forced to play them, you won't be completely clueless and you'll still have a pretty decent idea of what you're doing. So as a TLDR for this tip, either be a one-trick pony, be exceptionally strong at one champion, maybe two, or just be good at several champions, maybe 4, 5, or even 6 in a certain lane, while also having about 2 or 3 in other lanes. I truly think that's a very important tip, so try to follow it. The next one we'll go into is learning from your mistakes and also admitting that you're just simply not good enough. Now, I don't want this tip to come off as some negative one, but this one, just like all the other ones I've talked about, is so important. So let's talk about the first half, learning from your mistakes. If you're a player that is still obviously learning, is still trying to get better and get to a higher rating, then obviously you're going to be learning quite a bit. But whenever people lose in League of Legends, they get really sad, they get demotivated, and they just simply feel like they're bad at the game. But, and this applies almost to anything in life, you learn a lot more from when you lose than when you win. Whenever you win League of Legends games or anything in general, you don't really feel like you've actually learned anything because you feel like you performed well enough to win. So there isn't much you could have learned from your mistakes because you're gonna have the mindset of you just did not make many mistakes. You won, so clearly you're good enough. This is sometimes the problems with smurfs as well. If a player that's Diamond 1 begins smurfing at silver and they just play only silver games and gold games for the next several days or weeks, yeah, chances are they'll be dominating their lanes quite often, but eventually they'll get used to the mistakes that the enemy opponent is making that's causing them to win, and they'll get so used to it that when they go back to Diamond 1, those players are better and they're not making those mistakes, and suddenly this Diamond 1 player that's been playing in silver or gold for quite a few weeks is just not up to par on Diamond 1. So the point is, whenever you make mistakes, whenever you don't do anything perfectly, look and analyze what you did wrong and try to understand it and try to remember the next time you're making a similar play or play in general. And just don't make the same mistake twice. It's good to make mistakes, that's how you learn best. Then the second part of this tip I was talking about is just admitting you're not good enough. I really think that this tip on top of the first one that I mentioned at the beginning of the video are two of the main reasons as to why so many people are stuck in ELO hell, or I guess that's just what they like to call it. There's no such thing as ELO hell, or if you want to think of it existing, then it honestly exists in every single ELO range. I truly do not believe it. I mean, of course there are going to be some games that are just unwinnable, but keep in mind, some games, not a majority. So if you want to go from bronze to silver, silver to gold, gold to plat, plat to diamond, etc., what you need to do is not complain that you're stuck and you just keep getting bad teammates. You need to admit to yourself, mainly to yourself, you're just not good enough. You need to finally come to your senses. You need to realize that maybe your mechanics really just aren't up to where you probably think they are. Once you admit this, you'll finally be ready to learn and improve, and then you'll see yourself increasing. And the final tip, and probably the most basic one, yet also just as easily as important, wording. I mean, it's so simple, but it's just ridiculous how important it is. I'm victim to this as well. Sometimes I just don't simply word enough. I just think, oh, well, you know, wording is wording, I'll just play safe, it's okay. And then I end up dying several times because I simply just did not word. No one wants to invest that 75 gold or 100 gold into a pink ward to throw it down to try and get some vision. People just think they can play safe enough, they won't get ganked, they just simply don't need to see the objective. But warding is so darn important. Being able to see where the enemy team is at all times is just huge. Seeing them try to catch a pick, imagine if the enemy team standing in a bush, all 5 of them trying to wait for someone to walk in there, but you have it warded and they don't know, well, your team will actually get the upper hand and suddenly the hunters become the prey. Throwing down wards for Baron, Dragon, in the jungle, in the river to see if you're a mid laner or any other laner or the jungler's coming in for a gank or roaming. All of these things, even one small thing as seeing the mid laner or jungler go from mid lane to bottom lane, just that one ward that spotted that, or maybe that one ward that just for 2 seconds spotted an enemy champion going to Baron and you suddenly realize, hey, the enemy team is doing Baron. You go, you ace them, you take Baron, you push, you win the game. Just really small things like that can really change the game, which is why I think supporting is a big role and is a lot more important than people give it credit for. Because that is the role that will typically be warding for a majority of the game, especially from the start. Trust me guys, wards win games. I mean, yeah, it's still something I personally need to learn myself as well at times. But the thing is, I'm admitting my mistakes. I know I have issues. I know I'm not the best player, and I know there's several things I can improve on. I'm admitting it. I know what I can improve on. So now I'm just trying to improve on it. Alright guys, so those are the 5 things that I wanted to cover in this video, hopefully to try and give you more motivation and just a really good way to improve in the new and upcoming season. It's a fresh start, so don't worry, no matter how bad you did or maybe even how good you did in season 4, everything is erased, it's a fresh start, and you have a new way just to show everyone how much you've improved. Hopefully you take these tips to heart and you put them forward in your games in season 5. If you enjoyed the video and learned something new, please don't forget to throw in a like, share it with your friends, tell me what you think about the tips as well. And I want to wish all of you the best in season 5 and good luck climbing, and I'll see you hopefully all at the top. Peace.